Do you ever look at something and think, how in the world do they do that? The other day I was looking at this artwork on Blender Studio. It's a new project Gold that they're working on. So I was looking at the model and it's a test sculpt that they're doing. The artist is Julian Casper. It's a super cool sculpt. If you haven't checked it out, you totally should. I'll put a link in the description. But what he did was, in this sculpt, he took a cylinder, sculpted into kind of a dreadlock look. Then he added an array modifier to it and aligned it to a curve. And so if you have long hair that's going to be a repeating pattern, you could make hair this way. And it got me thinking, what other types of hair could you make like this? And one that is really hard that I think would super simplify the process are braids. So I attempted to use this process to create braids. I've tried it sculpting and box modeling, and I think box modeling is actually easier and gives you a cleaner result. Check out how I did this. So I started by sculpting like what one of the loops kind of looks like. So I scale it on the Z to kind of flatten it out. Then I scale it on the Y to kind of give it that longer look. I add center loops on both the Z, X, and Y. Then I take all the edges and I just scale them on the Y and then scale them on the Z so that I get a little bit of a cylinder look. I probably actually could have started with a cylinder, but whatever. Then I take those two endpoints and I drag them out. I'm trying to create the initial look of a braid. And you know, braids, they kind of get narrow towards the center as they go under another loop of hair. So that's why I narrowed that one side. Then I took all the points on the edges and I moved them towards the center so that I got more of a rounded look on the ends. I added a subdivision, 2 levels of subdivision to it. I was pretty happy with how this was looking. So I start positioning it where, like, you know, the first loop would go. At this point, I realized like the back portion needs to be bigger or wider, thicker than the front portion. So I just kind of scaled that up a little bit. Then I'm duplicating it and I am rotating it to kind of get that initial braid look. And then once you get all those placed where you want them, that's when you have to start adding the array modifier, because then you're going to kind of feel out where and how all these, you got to make the little tweaks, you know, the little adjustments here and there. So I get the initial object that I'm going to make the array from kind of all placed, get its origin set kind of where I want it, and then I add the array modifier. It's initially on the X, so I delete that and I add it to the Y because I want it to, you know, be created on the Y. And then using shift and dragging your mouse, I can slowly drag it and kind of put it exactly where I want. And you can see here that there's a big gap in between the two. So now I got to go in and using L individually select each one of the loops. I'm calling them loops. I mean, they're actually cubes, but they're braid loops. So, but you select each one of the loops or cubes, whatever you prefer, and just kind of rotate them and adjust them so that I can kind of fill in those gaps, get it kind of placed exactly where I want it. And it just takes a little bit of finagling. I think initially I had my angles too sharp. so I had to kind of flatten everything out. And then I get it to a point where I'm happy with it. And I'm like, yeah, this looks okay. I mean, I think I could have even kind of curved them a little bit. I think braids actually curve a little more than mine do. But I was happy with it. So I went ahead and add a NURBS path. And then I use the deform, align to curve, and select that path that I just added, and I align it on the Y because, yeah. So at this point, I adjust the path and flatten it out and get everything kind of set up just where I want it. I realized you had to drag those end points on the path kind of far out to keep the curve from deforming the geometry in weird spots. You can use, G to grab and move different points, but you can use Control T to rotate or twist individual points. You can use S to scale different points. And you can see here I'm getting some weird geometry. And if I just grab that end point and slide it out a little farther away from my core mesh, it ends up looking just fine. I go through some trial and error here, try and add more subdivisions, apply the subdivision modifier, but none of that works. And in the end, I figure out, oh yeah, if I just make that curve, that end point of the curve, farther away from my base mesh, then it resolves. It gives a little bit of stretching, but it's not bad. So there we go. We have not only do we have a cool braid, but it's also kind of rigged, so it makes it kind of easy to just move it around and style it. I mean, I know there are modifiers or add-ons that you can buy that'll do this, and they do it better and they do it nicer. But if you're you don't want to buy the add-on and you're looking for a quick, easy way to create a braid, man, this is amazing. I was like, there's been a couple of times when I've tried to create braids and it goes badly every time. I've tried the method where you use 3 curves and you just move them precisely, and oh man, it's not fun. It's not a pleasant experience. At least it wasn't for me. Maybe some people do it and they love it and that's awesome. But for me, it was not a pleasant experience. And this was just super simple, super easy. I mean, we're like, 8 minutes in and we already have our braids. So it's super fast. I went ahead and added like a little tip to the hair and a little scrunchy kind of thing around to wrap around it as kind of how you could finish it off if you wanted to. But yeah, anyway, that's how I approach braids. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you're able to use it and make some pretty cool sculpts with it. So thanks for watching.